And we are live. Welcome to another edition of DT Live. Today will be another video chat, a Zoom video chat. This chat will be for patrons only to join me on camera. This will be a new thing I want to do once a month. I want to do one of these video chats once a month with my patrons. Give you guys a chance to get on camera with me, chat with me for a little bit, get to know you guys better. Hopefully you guys get to know me a little better. Already we've got one person in the chat. Climby, can you hear me? Is your audio working? Okay. Bring your levels up a little bit. I can't quite hear you.
Alright, is that better?
Yeah, hold on just a second. One thing I do need to check is make sure all my pulse audio settings and everything are good. I did not check that before. Yeah, everything looks good on my end. So,
Okay.
all right. So, how you doing today, sir?
Doing good.
Doing good.
Yeah, just got Linux Mint Debian Edition installed and
cool.
running.
Yeah, I still haven't tried LMDE yet as far as the new release, version 3. I need to check that out sometime. Morning, Dan. How you doing?
Good morning. Doing well.
Yeah. Got my coffee here and ready to go. It's 10 a.m. here in the Central Time Zone, so not too early. I've been up a couple hours, so went and got me breakfast and moving around a little bit. Don't have much planned today. I planned on doing this stream for an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours at the most, because at 12 o'clock I have to be off the stream because the Saints kick off, and you know I gotta watch them destroy the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at noon. So
Absolutely.
all right, Climby, since I don't know if I've asked you this before, what distro do you run?
Well, I don't really stick to a particular distro. I just
You hop a lot.
Yeah.
We get that a lot here.
Yeah.
And Ansem has joined us. Or he's trying to. It's not on video yet. Q1 Fiend. How are you, sir? Gonna take everybody a minute to get settled in.
Can you hear me?
I heard somebody. Was that Ansem?
Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yeah. Bring your audio up just a little bit. You're kind of quiet.
You guys hear me?
Yep, you're good.
Yeah.
Yep. All right. So no real audio issues today with Zoom. Zoom can be a little tricky if you're not used to it. Sometimes when you first launch Zoom, it doesn't pick the correct inputs for mic, and sometimes the settings will be low. Also, sometimes by default it has this weird setting, this like a push to talk kind of setting. You want to turn that off. Just have your mic open all the time, because that really distorts your sound quality pretty badly. So,
Yeah.
all right. Well, I was just checking out some of the recent Linux news, scouring the web. One interesting thing I found earlier today over on Reddit, of all places, was I guess Linus Torvalds has been talking with the kernel team about basically replacing him at some point. You know, he's starting to think ahead as far as, you know, what happens with the kernel after Linus, you know, should something happen to him. But he's thinking, you know, more along the lines of eventually, you know, he may just want to move on to other things in life. You know, he's been working on the kernel now, 30 years. You know, eventually, he says, you know, he's got other plans to, you know, I mean, he said, and then the what he put on the mailing list, some of his plans involve a lot of drinking. So, but anyway,
Start, right?
yeah, right. Well, he says he's, you know, this is not him, you know, thinking about quitting as much as, you know, just way ahead of time, you know, start thinking about succession, right?
Yeah.
Because a lot of people in the free and open source communities always ask, well, what's going to happen? Like, what's going to happen with the Free Software Foundation when Richard Stallman passes away? You know, because he's, you know, in his late 60s. I mean, he's elderly. I mean, he's not a young guy, and Linus is not a young guy either. I mean, he's not Richard Stallman's age, but I mean, he's a middle-aged man. I mean, what happens when these guys, you know, are no longer with us?
Right.
who
Yeah.
takes
Succession
it?
is important.
Yeah, who takes up, you know, those mantles? So,
Mm-hmm.
the Colonel, I think, is well placed for that. They've got a lot of, you know, good people that work closely with Linus. I don't know about, you know, the free software movement in particular. That thing really is all Richard Stallman for the most part. There's really nobody like him. You know, he's a very unique individual. So.
Yeah. Good, better, and different. Right. Yeah.
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 Yeah. Well, I mean,
Certainly unique.
yeah. Well, there is something to be said, though. You know, as far as would, you know, the free software movement be better without Richard Stallman? You know, without his eccentric, you know, personality and you know, everything that comes along with it. Him eating stuff off of his foot, and you know, and the whole hippie mentality still from the '60s. And yeah.
Right.
I don't know. It's a discussion for another day, I think. Like I may debate somebody on that at some point. You know, whether, you know, Richard Stallman is a good thing for the movement or not.
Right.
One thing I wanted to do really quickly, I didn't expect people to jump into the chat like immediately when I started the stream. I wanted to run something here. People complained about the new intro yesterday. It was too flashy. You know, people were complaining that it's, you know, could induce seizures with people with epilepsy, and that a lot of people watch, you know, my videos late at night, you know, in a dark room, and it's too bright, that little intro. So let's try this one on for size. Quick, to the point, 5 seconds. No light show. So, of course, you guys in the chat, in the Zoom chat, didn't get to see that, but everybody in the stream got to see that and hear it. There was sound to it as well. All right. Speaking of in the chat, yeah, Big Pod says, hopefully the Free Software Foundation goes away. Wow. I don't think the Free Software Foundation should go away. I think it does a lot of good things. Richard Stallman is an extremely bad thing, says Big Pod. Well, yeah. There's a debate to be made about that. Let's see. Yeah. You like the original logo and intro better? Yeah, I was just playing around with something different.
I don't know. I think the new one's kind of cool.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm gonna tweak them a little bit too. I know the intro, especially, a lot of people didn't like that intro. A lot of people were, oh, it's too crazy, you know. A little too flashy, yeah. Let's see what else we have. Anything recent in Linux news to talk about? Well, actually, one recent thing I mentioned about a week ago was the passing of Terry Davis, the creator of Temple OS. Well, when I made my video, it wasn't confirmed, but in the last few days, actually, it was really shortly after I made that video, it was kind of confirmed. Some of his family members did post on the internet, and there have been news reports and obituaries now about Terry Davis, his passing, so. Which I was like 99% sure he had passed away when I mentioned that on the live stream about a week ago about his passing. Even though the story came from 4chan, those guys over at 4chan, over at G, they follow Terry Davis a lot. And, you know, they kind of really worship the guy. You know, he was a really interesting individual, and you know, I did that stream several hours after, you know, all the stuff came out about Terry Davis passing away, you know, on 4chan and Twitter. And nobody disputed it. You know, you would think somebody that knew the guy would come out and say, no, he's alive and well. Here he is right here. But, you know, so I was, you know, pretty sure that the story was true. And it turns out it was, it's the story, what they're reporting now may be that he committed suicide. It might be what happened. Originally, they were thinking his death might have been some kind of accident, but it appears he took his own life. So. It's unfortunate.
I know I grabbed the ISO for that yesterday.
The Temple OS? Yeah, I have no idea what to even do with that thing. It is such a strange operating system. And I don't know if you can find a lot about it, like even on YouTube, if you want to try out Temple OS and see what it's all about. Because a lot of the stuff that Terry put on YouTube, YouTube took down because of his mental illness, his schizophrenia. You know, he when that kind of illness, you don't really have a filter. You just blurt out anything in your head. So he would constantly spew obscenities, profanities, racial remarks. He focused a lot about conspiracy theories and the CIA. And a lot of the stuff he talked about, of course, got his videos taken down. So you won't find a lot of Terry Davis on YouTube. You might find it in other places, though. Maybe some of the 4chan guys, you know, saved some of his stuff. But yeah, it's a strange OS. It's not. I mean, when I created my virtual machine on that live stream the other day to test it out, you guys pointed out that the virtual box I created, you know, I chose Linux as the operating system. I think I chose Linux Other, which worked as far as the virtual machine, but Temple OS is not a Linux distribution at all. It is, he built Temple OS from the ground up, Terry Davis did. It is a completely unique operating system, which, you know, is amazing, considering, you know, a lot of times, though, these people with mental illnesses, though, they can be geniuses. I mean, for whatever handicap, you know, Terry Davis's illness gave him as far as, you know, life. He was a brilliant programmer. He really was. Some of the stuff he did. He created his own version of the C programming language called Holy C, which, you know, he built Temple OS on. And, of course, the whole point of building Temple OS was to communicate with God through his operating system. As you know, he's claimed that it was divinely inspired. And anyway, unique operating system, unique individual. So.
Or if you could run that on like a 486.
No, I doubt it, because he built this really with modern architecture in mind.
Yeah, it was 64-bit, I think.
Yeah. He only created a 64-bit image, as far as I know. Yeah. I mean, yeah, you would think, you know, you look at it and it's really retro, really old school, but yeah, you need a modern machine to run it, which is strange because the resolution is, you know, like a 640 resolution, and it's all plain text. Yeah, it's
hardly any memory.
Yeah. But no, yeah. So you'd have to have a 64-bit machine.
Mm-hmm.
You can't get much to run on a 486 these days, really. Even Linux distros, most of them won't have an image that's going to work for you. Gentoo, you can still compile Gentoo to work for you.
I still have a copy of Red Hat 7.2 that I ran on a 4666 back in the day.
Wow. You know, about what time period was this? What year?
2000.
Yeah.
Thereabouts.
Right around 2000. Okay. Well, that's not bad.
It was the first time I mucked with it, and I think they were still using Lilo as the bootloader back then.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were. It was just before they switched to Fedora Core, really. There's only a couple of releases after that I think and then they switched to Fedora Core.
Yep.
Yeah, so that would have been, about 20 years ago, 18, 20 years ago. Yeah, yeah, and mentioning, the bootloader, Lilo. You know, there are distributions, sometimes I review on the channel, that still use that thing rather than Grub by default. It's strange.
I'm actually reading the FAQ here for TinyCore, and it says minimum CPU i486DX.
Yeah, TinyCore should work. Yeah, I didn't think about it. As a matter of fact, I think I still have that VM of TinyCore that when I took a look at it on my channel.
And it says the absolute minimum amount of RAM is 46 megabytes.
Yeah. The thing with TinyCore was a monster of a distribution as far as doing anything on video with, because I couldn't put it on real hardware and record it. I couldn't install things like Simple Screen Recorder or OBS or anything, because none of that stuff is in the TinyCore repos. I mean, those are kind of big, heavy programs. You know, but those guys are not packaging anything like that, any of that multimedia stuff. So I needed to do it in a VM. And getting TinyCore installed in a VM was a beast. I can go ahead and tell you guys, if you want to take a look at TinyCore in VirtualBox, you're going to have real problems with the mouse. Make sure the mouse input is set to PS2 and not USB. If you have it set to USB, your mouse is not going to work in the VM, and it's going to frustrate the hell out of you, and you're going to wonder why things aren't working. So,
yeah, it makes sense. It's probably based on older hardware that only had PS2.
Mm-hmm. And since figuring that out with TinyCore, I've also figured that that trick works with some other like really stripped down minimal distros. Always set your mouse to PS2. Don't set it to USB because it's just not going to work. So, yeah. And Alan Pope is in the chat. He says, "Yeah, TinyCore is great, but quite an investment of time." Yeah, it is such a small image too. I want to say the image for TinyCore that I downloaded was, I want to say it was less than 20 megs. I forget what the size of that image is, but it is just crazy how small that is for a complete live Linux distribution. Well, I say complete. You know, obviously there's not much to it, but it is. I mean, you're booting into a live environment, so.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yep. Yeah, not something I really have a use for. I'm not, you know, I'm not who they designed that distro for, but a lot of people love that sort of thing. A lot of people love Puppy. Puppy is quite a bit better of a distro as far as fully featured distro than TinyCore. Some people actually live in Puppy, which is strange. I haven't taken a look at Puppy on the channel. I should at some point.
I actually mentioned this on Rocco Stream, but my first live environment that I ever tried on Linux was Damn Small Linux.
Yeah, I remember Damn Small Linux. They weren't they using the JWM, Joe's Window Manager, just like Puppy did? Remember they used one of those minimal window managers, kind of like OpenBox, but not really.
Fluxbox was one.
Was Fluxbox? Yeah, it might have been Fluxbox. Yeah, Damn Small Linux. That was a great distribution way back in the day. It's been dead forever now, so. Damn Small is damn dead, so I think they died like, I think they quit like 2011, 2012 was their last release. So, and we're probably going to see a lot more of that here in the next few years, because I think a lot of these really stripped down minimal Linux distros, a lot of them are going to go away because there's less of a market for those things now. Yeah. You're already seeing a lot of major Linux distributions dropping 32-bit images. They don't want to support 32-bit machines because it's not worth their time and effort anymore to do a 32-bit image, because there's just not that many of these machines around anymore.
Yeah, the hardware is aging out for sure.
Yeah. I think you'll always have, you know, things like Puppy and Antics, but, you know, some of the other ones, you know, there just won't be enough of a market for them that, you know, there are a few too many of these distributions around geared toward the really ancient hardware.
Yep.
Yeah, Big Pod says he has so much problems with Debian and Seduction. What kind of problems are you having with Debian and Seduction? Seduction, I understand, is, you know, why you might have some problems with it being a rolling release. Are you also doing a Debian SID on your Debian box?
Yeah, Debian Stable should be, you know.
Yeah, Debian Stable is one of those distros you just set it and forget it. You just, you know, if you're doing testing, and certainly if you're doing unstable, yeah, you can run into some issues. Matter of fact, I've run a lot of SID, and I've used Seduction in the past too, and I've always had those things break, you know, at some point.
Yeah,
that's. I mean, they call it the unstable branch. I mean, they label it unstable. So
right.
Unless you're running like Debian Stable on like bleeding edge hardware because of the outdated packages, that's really the only thing.
Yeah. I mean, if you've got hardware that's newer than the kernel that's in Debian, yeah, that can be a problem because, yeah, some of your hardware may not be supported.
Right. Yeah, I mean, Debian Stable's still 4.9, I think. So
yeah, it is.
Yeah, and that's a little long in the tooth there, 4.9, because The latest LTS kernel is what, 4.15?
Yeah, 4.14, 4.15.
4.14, yeah.
414 is the LTS.
And they're about to come out with a new LTS kernel. I think the 4.18 kernel or the 4.19. 4.19 kernel is planned for an LTS. So.
Right.
Yeah. Harish in the chat says, "Good morning, folks. What's the topic about?" No topic. We just chat about anything. Anything. Doesn't have to be Linux related. Whatever you guys want to chat about. Robbo's in the chat. "Hi, Derek. Not able to hop on for this one, but watching and enjoying." Oh, good to see you, Rob. Rob is one of our patrons, regular viewer of the show, too. Sometimes he hops onto these Zoom chats. Rob's a cool guy. All right. So Q1 Fiend, what do you run?
2 computers that way. That's Mint, Arco, and I'm working on a half-broken Manjaro system behind this laptop.
Well, you know that's amazing because my main machine, Manjaro. These 2 laptops behind me, one's Arco and one's Mint. So.
I just absolutely fell in love with Arco. And
yeah, it's fantastic. Yeah.
Desktop, and I've got an old Athlon X2 here running Manjaro that I'm trying to track a problem down on.
Yeah, and to be honest, I feel the same way about Arco. If I wanted to do like a real Arch install, like a stripped down base Arch install, I think I would just go Arco these days. I love what Derek Dubois does with you know, those scripts on GitHub. How he makes it so easy now to get, especially these minimal like tiling window managers and minimal floating window managers like OpenBox, up and running instead of having to build them yourself. So.
Right. Yeah. Which Arco are you running?
692.
Yeah, B or D or.
Yeah. Oh. I'd have to get over there.
Yeah.
Yeah. What desktop window manager?
That's XFCE. It's just the standard Arco install.
Okay, yeah, that would.
Oh, okay, yep.
Yep.
Yeah, that's very cool.
Yeah, I ended up putting BSPWM on mine, mainly because I didn't know anything about that particular tiling window manager, but it's not bad. It's not a bad tiling window manager.
That's cool. I did an Arco install a little while ago. It was i3, so the meme, Arch meme.
Yeah, well, if you run Arch, you have to run i3. I mean, that's what everybody expects. Yeah.
Yep. But it was very cool. Yeah, the scripts are awesome. I mean, and it walks you right through, and it's a good training.
Yeah. It's the meme. If you ever go to the Unix porn subreddit where everybody posts their screenshots, 90% is Arch, right? 10% is Gentoo. Okay, of the 90% that's Arch, 90% of that is i3, 10% is OpenBox. So, it's like, do you guys ever like branch out and do anything different? You're all running the same stuff. It's the same programs over and over again in these screenshots. And yeah, Arco is fantastic, and Eric Dubois has got some other stuff planned. I mean, he's already got like a dozen different window managers he's supporting.
Yeah, and he keeps adding them.
Yeah, and he's got plans for more, because I have seen over on Arco's website. Let me pull up this if I can. I'm actually gonna show the YouTube stream my web browser here. I don't know if you guys in the Zoom chat will see this, but he has an Arco Linux D page already planned here for Qtile. I mean, they've got nothing as far as anything in the GitHub repos for Qtile, but like he's already planning that, and that is really cool because I don't know any distro that does anything with Qtile. It's kind of an obscure window manager, pun intended. Other than the stuff I do with Qtile on my YouTube channel, you don't see Qtile anywhere. I never see screenshots of it. Nobody talks about it. There's no videos about it. And when I've done some of my Arco Linux reviews, when I reviewed Arco Linux, their Awesome Window Manager Edition, and the BSPWM Edition, I mentioned in the comments that it would be great if they did a Qtile version and an Xmonad version. I'd love to see those two tiling window managers, and Eric Dubois posted a comment in both those videos too. Anyway, he now has at least, you know, these dummy pages marked for Qtile and Xmonad on Arco Linux. I don't know.
That's cool.
If anybody's working on it, or, you know, I guess I could I could chip in, maybe give them some configs to help them out. But I think that would be fantastic, especially Qtile. Again, nobody knows anything about Qtile. You never hear about it, and it's such a nice tiling window manager. Kind of easy to config too. Everything's written in Python, so
yeah,
you don't have to be this. You don't have to be this super programmer. You know, this hacker, this elite hacker to get the thing up and running. You know, if you know a little Python, it's entirely written in Python. The whole thing is Python. So
yeah, it's very cool.
Yeah.
At least it's not Haskell, right?
Well, yeah, that's the problem with Xmonad. Every time, you know, my Xmonad, I've got Xmonad on Manjaro here. I'm in Qtile right now, but I can log into an Xmonad session. And I've had my Xmonad configs for years. And I have had to fix those things several times because you get an update. You know, Haskell updates, Xmonad updates, GHC, the Haskell compiler updates, and sometimes things break. You know, changes in syntax, your config no longer works. Now you have to figure out what has changed. And now you're digging through, what is the Haskell language website? Is it Hoogle or whatever? Anyway, you start searching for what's changed, and it's just a nightmare of a programming language. I have no idea how this thing works. Sometimes I just start guessing. You know, just start deleting lines, and if it fixes the problem, okay, did I really need that line in the first place? If I did, then I find a way to put that line back in, you know, changing some syntax and hopefully getting it to work. But I really hate some of these tiling window managers where they change the syntax like every version, and you're always having to rewrite your config. That hasn't happened. You know, I've been running Qtile off and on for years, and I've only had my Qtile config break to where I couldn't log in a couple of times, and being Python, the answer was usually pretty straightforward. So anyway, Ben says, howdy, Derek. Is $1 acceptable donation to join the stream? If not, actually, Ben, you have been a long-time patron. I know you're not currently subscribed this month. Why don't you hop on the stream? Send me an email, Ben, if you still got my email, and I'll send you a link to the Zoom chat. I actually had meant to email you earlier today, Ben, and I forgot to. I actually meant to send you a link to the stream. Sorry about that. Yeah, Mr. GFY says, good morning. Harris is asking, do Nvidia cards run much hotter using a Linux distro compared to Windows? Must be the driver, question mark. I don't have a Windows machine to compare. I use Nvidia. I haven't noticed heat problems with my Nvidia cards. I don't know if you guys got any experience with running Nvidia on both Windows and Linux. Any of you guys dual boot?
I have one dual booter over here. I haven't noticed a temperature difference.
Yeah.
Yeah. I haven't either.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah, what could be the problem there? And he's asking, I guess if he's having temperature issues in one and not the other, he's asking it must be the driver. Could be. Could be.
I have a slight temp difference. It's not much, maybe 3-4 degrees. They do run about 5 on average hotter than in Windows.
Okay. So a little bit of
Also,
a difference.
On a few things too, like what compositor you're running or what, you know, that.
Yeah, it could be. Yeah.
Well, I go into the configs and change it so it runs full speed all the time in Linux. So.
Yeah.
Too.
Yeah.
Yeah, do the drivers on Linux handle the fan curve different, maybe? Yeah, I'm not sure on that one either. Dennis in the chat was asking. Yeah, I'm not sure, you know, as far as the difference between the Linux drivers and the Windows drivers as far as they handle the fan.
In theory, they're proprietary, so they should be coming.
You would think. Yeah, if they're using the proprietary drivers, we didn't ask him. He might have been even using the Nouveau drivers. I hope not. If you have an Nvidia card, don't use the open source drivers because those things are terrible. And let me check my email. Get back to Ben here for a second. Give me just a second, guys. Yeah, Bean in the chat. Nvidia drivers aren't the best in Linux. The AMD GPU drivers are great because they're, yeah, AMD and Intel drivers are a lot better than Nvidia because they're in the kernel. You know, everything's open source now, and it's all baked into the kernel. Where the, yeah, the Nvidia drivers, they're a real problem.
Mm-hmm.
I imagine eventually Nvidia will get on some open source stuff because their competitors are all doing it. It kind of makes sense for them to eventually get in on it too.
Well, if you look back, I mean, Nvidia was the way to go for Linux for like the longest time.
And to be honest, they still are. I know AMD is coming up, but really, Nvidia cards with the proprietary drivers are still so much better. So, but it's getting closer now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just the quirks of setting up the proprietary driver sometimes.
Yeah, that's the problem. It's not, you know, the proprietary drivers are great once you get them installed. It's, yeah, you have to get them installed, get the right one installed, the right version. Sometimes different versions work for you than others. I know sometimes I have to go to an older version of the proprietary driver because the newest one, for some reason, will be glitchy. I'm actually not sure what I'm running here on Manjaro at the moment. Sorry, guys. Give me just a second. You got a million emails to manage here. Gotta find the one that Ben sent me. Drinking my Taco Bell coffee. It's not the greatest. Taco Bell, they do decent breakfast. The breakfast burrito I got from them was not bad. Their coffee, though, is pretty horrible. This is nasty stuff. I mean, McDonald's coffee is like gourmet coffee compared to this thing.
I'm drinking my Tim Hortons.
Yeah.
I'm drinking oolong tea.
All right, Ben, I sent you an email finally. Sorry, that took a minute. All right. Yeah, Taco Bell coffee, LOL. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, Taco Bell hasn't been doing breakfast that long, at least not the one where I'm at. It's not horrible, though. I mean, the food is not bad. You know, they do like some breakfast burritos and like breakfast quesadillas, you know, with like egg and steak and stuff. And the breakfast foods are not bad. The coffee, though, yeah, don't drink the coffee. Get a bottle of water with your breakfast.
Got one of those too.
All right. Yeah, spam protection. I just subbed on Patreon. Appreciate that. Appreciate that. I'll check it out. If you just subbed, also check on my Patreon page, and you'll find a link to this chat if you want to join in. Spam. Let's see. Anyone know why Ubuntu 18.04 takes forever to boot? I'm using SSD, but it sits at the purple screen for a while before finally booting. I've never had problems with any of the Ubuntus taking forever to boot. I mean, all the recent versions of Ubuntu run systemd, and those things usually boot up in seconds. You know, 5 to 10 seconds on most decent hardware. If it's hanging for a long time, yeah, I don't know.
You could hit escape and probably see, you know, what it's doing in the boot up process.
Yeah, see if there's some kind of error message.
It might be just waiting on you know, mounting an NFS mount or something that doesn't exist or something like that.
Right. Yeah. The only Ubuntu, well, it's not an official Ubuntu distro, but there is an Ubuntu-based distro that takes forever and a day to boot up. It doesn't matter the hardware or what. Linux Lite, the recent version of Linux Lite, that thing takes a long time to boot up. I don't know why.
That's my experience too, DT.
Yeah, yeah.
I have a netbook I upgraded from 3.8 to 4, and the boot time tripled.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And when I first, I installed it on one of my laptops, tested out to run it. And when I first booted it up after installation, it took so long to boot up. I actually thought, well, you know what, this install must have not gone well. Something's broken. I check around on the internet, and everybody says, oh, that's normal. Yeah, that's just Linux Lite. Don't worry about it. So they're doing something with the boot up, that's
it's
slowing
funny,
it down.
Same computer with 3.8 boots up in 30, 40 seconds off an SD card.
No. Yeah, and he was asking with the boot up time, maybe a problem with his SSD. I don't think so. It's probably just problem. Yeah, check the logs if you got any logs to check, or as Dan said, press escape and see if you got any information on screen. See if what kind of output it's giving you on screen. And if it gives you something, some kind of message as far as, a mount points or any kind of anything that should be there that's not, maybe it's something you can go to a support channel and copy and paste and get some help on.
Yeah.
If you're not that invested in the install, though, you might just try reinstalling.
Yeah.
Because these installs take 15 minutes. I mean, start to finish. No harm if you're not already, got a lot of data on the system anyway. You've got your backups anyway. You just did a fresh install. Just do another one and see if it goes better the next time. Sometimes you do get a bad ISO too. I've had this happen where I download an ISO, and every time I try to install from that ISO, things don't work out well. But then I go and download the ISO for that distribution again, and then everything's straight. So sometimes you get a bad image. A corrupted image. So let's see. Yeah, Alan Pope, the systemd analyze blame is a good thing to try. 20 seconds on Plymouth is what Adam's saying. Yeah, 20 seconds is a long time to be stuck at the Plymouth screen. I don't know if that's something I would worry about too much, though 20 seconds is longer than it should take, but 20 seconds is not like forever. And when I said Linux Lite took forever to boot, I mean that thing, a minute and a half, it takes a long time. 20 seconds, as long as everything else is working, I'm not sure. I mean, how often are you rebooting your computer? Yeah, it's 20 seconds of your life, what, once or twice a week? So... Yeah, Robbo always had fast boot with Ubuntu, yeah. Yeah, Big Pod. Good thing about Windows is there's no systemd.
I guess.
I'll leave that alone. I'll leave that alone for two reasons. I don't know that much about Windows, don't want to bash on Windows, but also I don't want to comment on systemd because I have no problems with systemd. As like all these distros I try, if they have systemd as the init system, they work. The ones that don't have systemd as the init system, they work too. Gen 2 and all those that use OpenRC, yeah, that's fine. Or Void with Runit, fine. The ones that are still using sysv, okay. Like, I don't get wrapped up in the init system argument.
No, I mean systemd is relatively young, I guess. I mean, so they're still developing it. I mean.
Yeah. And the thing with systemd is it's not going anywhere.
Right.
Systemd is the default init system on 95% of the Linux machines running today. I mean, really, once Debian switched to systemd, game over, right? So I mean, systemd's everywhere at that point. So because everything is so much is based on Debian. You know, once they switched over, and then of course Red Hat and Fedora and SUSE were already on Systemd. Arch was on Systemd. So many Arch-based distros now too. That's it. You know, the only holdout. You know, Gentu's never going to switch to Systemd, but you know that's a kind of a small niche community. You know, Gentoo. So. Yeah, Big Pod says he doesn't have problems with Systemd. It's more or less of a joke. Okay, he's just clarifying his Windows and Systemd. Yeah, we like humor here. Even
better, there's no Pulse Audio though.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, the Pulse Audio thing just drives me nuts. And the last time I did one of these Zoom chats, I mentioned, you know, that probably audio is my biggest frustration on Linux. Because of what I do, you know, I got a lot of, you know, audio inputs and, you know, OBS and, you know, Zoom and Discord and everything. And the things just break on me all the time. The configs are not right. The settings and the Pulse Audio volume control change for no reason. You know, I don't go in there and change anything, but, you know, like I've got all the audio settings fine for this stream today. If I wanted to do a live stream tomorrow, this same Zoom chat, all my settings in Pulse Audio may be different tomorrow. Right. It's weird. Like, and I didn't change anything. So
exactly, it changes the defaults, and it's not like you can't change it back. It changed it all, and now you got to go through and do it.
Yeah, but you have to remember. Let me make sure Pulse Audio is right, because if I don't, I'll just start streaming tomorrow. And you guys have seen this. I start streaming. Hey, you've got no sound. Well, I had sound yesterday. What changed between now and yesterday? And I go and open up Pulse Audio, and one of the sliders, instead of being at 100%, is at 0%. Right. And I didn't put it there. You know, it's like the gremlins in the machine went in there, and I know one of the problems for a fact that is causing me some issues. So I give Pulse Audio some slack on this. My microphone, the microphone, this Blue Yeti microphone I use, the cord in it has a short. If I move the mic, it kills the audio to the power to the mic, right? So it's got some play in it. And when that happens sometimes, that causes Pulse Audio to go crazy and all the sliders and everything to do different things.
Right.
So I do know the microphone is part of the problem. But not all the time. So.
Right.
One of the things that surprised me a little bit using Linux Mint Debian Edition is that they didn't actually include PAVU control. Glad to get that. I know they use. I know they have their own audio like management thing in Cinnamon Desktop now, but they didn't have PAVU control installed.
Okay. Well, they're using Pulse Audio, but they don't give you the volume controller.
Yeah.
They're using their own, like, some kind of notification widget or something that you can adjust the levels.
Yep.
Okay.
But you can't control, like, on a per-app basis using that. So if you need to do that, then you have to get PAVU audio control.
Yeah. And Alan Pope is saying, get a new cable, ? Smiley face. This is the third cable I've tried. The problem is... Well, I said it was a cable problem. The problem really is the mini USB port on the Blue Yeti itself. It will not seat the cord, the plug, correctly. There's too much wiggle. There's too much play in it. So it's really a problem with this mic. I've looked around on the internet. A lot of people have problems with the USB ports on the Yeti mics. Some more than others. I think I was just unlucky, and I've got one of the ones that has way too much play in it. I mean, I really can just barely touch this thing, and it will power off because the plug, it just comes loose quickly. Hey Ben, good to see you. Hey Ben, bring your audio up. You're really low. Yeah, you bring it up a little more.
How's that?
Yeah, that's a lot better.
There you go.
Well, my speakers are not working inside of Ubuntu, so I have to use my HDMI audio on this tower. I don't know why, but when I switch to that, I can't hear anything.
No.
But anyway,
so you're running Ubuntu now?
Xubuntu, yes.
Xubuntu, okay. Oh, that's right. You're strictly XFCE these days, aren't you?
Well, unfortunately, yes. I've tried. I've tried, other GUIs. They're just not, appealing. I mean, I did make my own awesome WM config in i3, as I'm sure you know.
Yep.
But they were just more than I could handle, unfortunately.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I don't know if i3 is more than you can handle, Ben, but yeah, I can understand it not being your cup of tea. If you're used to XFC,
it's not that I don't like it. It's just I'm not a keyboard centric user personally.
Right. Right.
I mean, because I game and all these other things, they're just it's not my cup of tea, like you said.
Yeah. The reason I have found tiling window managers to work for me over the years is doing things with multi-monitors, things like this YouTube channel. I have like 7-8 windows open right now. And I want them in a specific spot on each screen. I also want them in a fixed area on the screen because I'm capturing all these windows in OBS. I want them a certain size. I can't really do that with a floating window manager. Well, OpenBox, I can set some rules in OpenBox to where things will open in a at a particular size. But in tiling window managers, like in Qtile today, i3 works, Awesome works, Xmonad, all those work. I can set rules to where I have a key binding, and this window for Zoom is always going to open on this workspace, on this monitor, at this size, filling this area. So I never have to adjust it, pick the mouse up and play with it, get it, to fit in my OBS overlay just right. It really does save me some time, that aspect of tiling window manager. So.
Right. And this Friday when I get my allowance, I do plan to send some of it to you so that way I can be a Patreon again. So.
No hurry on that, Ben. I appreciate that, though.
Yeah, I will try and get it done as soon as possible. But either way, yeah, I just wanted to still be on your streams and that sort of thing.
Yeah, I actually, like I said, I actually meant to email you too because.
Yeah, you can just do that until I can.
Not a problem.
But anyway, another thing that I'm struggling with is the fact that I know that Steam is now trying to support more Windows games, and unfortunately, I'm struggling with that because I tried the latest Nvidia driver on Ubuntu, and unfortunately, their efforts are not working out for me because for example, I installed Jade Empire and a couple of other Windows titles through their wine type thing, Proton, and unfortunately, it was a failure.
Yeah.
Because
and this is
I don't think they're on the compatibility list because there's some games that I bought on Steam. But unfortunately, it's exclusive to Windows right now, even though they've been ported to Proton. But
if they're not on the white list, they're not officially supported yet.
A lot of the games that I play, like KOTOR and Jade Empire and things like that, are in Mass Effect. They do load, but unfortunately, they're not optimized yet, and they just lag like crazy, and they have very crappy performance. So until they get whitelisted there and tested, they're not going to work properly.
Yeah, I've heard people that dual boot say they own this Windows game, and on their Windows box, they get 200 frames per second, and then they try it with Proton on Linux, and they get 30 frames per second. On some game.
It looked like it was less than 30 for me. I wasn't exactly sure, but
so
on this tower with my GTX 1050, unfortunately it's not a TI, unfortunately, but it's just a normal 1050, and unfortunately, SWTOR and Wine runs perfectly fine, but the MML version of KOTOR. But unfortunately, in Proton, however, and this is using the 390 NVIDIA driver, because the 396 just, it didn't work at all. But the Proton games that I do own are not tested, so like I said, they're not going to run properly.
Hey, Ben. They've come a long way with it. It's really amazing.
Hey, Ben, what did you pull the drivers from the PPA?
Yes, unfortunately, the drivers did not take effect. I don't know why I ran NVIDIA-Xconfig even in terminal, and they just did not take effect. I don't know what the heck I did wrong. I did install them in 1804, and they're not taking effect. I don't know.
I have run in 1804, but even Steam says you have to have the latest NVIDIA drivers, which you can only get from the
right. And I did try to get the 396 drivers, and they're just not taking effect. I don't know why, but I tried, several times last night. I removed the 390, installed the 396, reboot. Nothing's doing it. I don't know what the hell's wrong, but I just can't get them to work.
Yeah. And in the chat, Alan Pope says, hang on, guys. If the game isn't on the list, the white list, you can't really complain. Proton is fantastic for the ones that work. Give it some time. Absolutely agreed. Valve is going to get all this stuff worked out. They're going to want to get to the point where every single Windows-only game works regardless of operating system you play on it. That's where they're going. They want everybody, regardless of whether you're running Linux, Mac, what have you, to be able to play every game.
Yeah, I mean, I know
for financial reasons, that makes
a while to get the other games working.
Yeah. Well, Valve is a very large company. They're going to get it worked out quick. I mean, they're already working with the guys behind Wine, and
yeah.
Yeah.
The sad thing is, they just don't have a native 64-bit program yet.
Well, I mean, Valve can't make companies write native Linux games. But, right. I mean, this Wine wrapper, this Proton wrapper that they're helping develop, I think it's a step in the right direction. Also, I think it's good because it gives these people that are making Windows-only games, it gives them some information to go on. It's like, hey, look at all these people on Linux that are running your game in Proton. Why don't you make a native Linux client for them? You got all these people interested in it anyway, so... Also, thank you for the super chat, Mika in the chat. This super chat, appreciate that. Proton and Steam Play enabled me to move permanently to Manjaro as my daily driver on my rig. I did VFIO prior to that. Mostly play Dota and Overwatch. Okay, so there you go. I mean, basically Steam for Linux and now Proton, Steam Play, is already helping people. And I've heard other people mention this too, that this is really the last step in them moving 100% from Windows to Linux, is getting the last couple of games they need. So
yeah, it's definitely come a long way. It's really impressive.
Yes, Steam has
yeah. When I mentioned the Steam Play story a couple of weeks ago on one of the Taking Into Account episodes, I told you it was probably the biggest Linux story of the year.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And maybe one of the biggest Linux stories in the 10 years I've been running Linux full-time on my desktop. The only story bigger than the Steam Play story that I can tell you was a bigger story for Linux. The biggest story of all time was Valve's coming to Linux. I mean, right. Steam's coming. Yeah, that was gigantic news. But Steam Play, it's right up there. Certainly a top 5 story all time as far as Linux on the desktop.
Guys, I tried the Ubuntu graphics PPA, and for some reason, the 396 driver, it installed, but it didn't really take effect. And I am running the 4.18.7 kernel that just came out, and for some reason, the NVIDIA driver fails to run with DKMS. I don't know what the heck I did wrong.
That's the same setup I have, and I have no problems. Of course, I'm running Ubuntu 1804, so...
You're running 4.18. Are you on one of the development releases? Are you on 18.10 already, Ben?
No, I'm on 1804.1,
like
I said, and I installed I downloaded the UKUU package, and it allowed me to get the 4.18.7 kernel,
right.
But excuse me, it didn't like that I installed the Ubuntu PPA for the graphics card, and I'd hate to have to do a clean install, but unfortunately, I'm starting to think that might be a good idea, but I just don't know.
Yeah, I'm wondering if you installed the NVIDIA drivers before you switch.
Well, what I did was I installed the Nvidia drivers right away after an install because, quite frankly, I wasn't exactly sure. I know it's going to sound silly, but yeah, big pot, I'll try that. But unfortunately, it's been so long since I used Ubuntu, it kind of escaped me what to do afterwards. But unfortunately, I just, what I typically did was after installs, I went ahead and installed the graphics drivers because I thought that was the right thing to do. Matthew Moore typically helps me set up things, but unfortunately he wasn't around, so I just sort of wung it, and then,
Well, you made an important point there, though, Ben. You're right, because you're used to things like Gentoo and Arch. I run a lot of Arch-based distros, and when you switch over to an Ubuntu system, a lot of the things you're used to, like I mean, sometimes these things are easier than we make them out to be. You're trying to get graphics drivers installed the way you would on Arch or Gentoo. Ubuntu is going to have some easy tool to.
Users, so everything that I knew in the source-based distros wasn't there, so I was like, "Oh my God, what do I do?" So basically, I just was kind of stuck.
And we have one of the guys from Canonical in the chat, Alan Pope. He says that UKUU package is dangerous. He wouldn't touch that with a very long pole, so that might be.
Jumping kernels in Ubuntu is not necessarily recommended.
Is a dangerous thing, and I didn't know that, so trying to do this Ubuntu install basically just was kind of like foreign territory, unfortunately.
I've been having lots of issues lately with installing Steam after the Nvidia drivers, and so I've been just installing Steam first. And then
I did. You see, Ubuntu is like the woods for me. It's a very foreign environment compared to Gentoo or Arch or LFS, because those kind of things I know like the back of my hand. But unfortunately, this is like a total, it's like Finnish to me. It's like a foreign language, you might say, as much as that sounds weird. So unfortunately, I am in basically a foreign environment. So, I just, I basically am like in a baby zone right now.
Yeah, Ubuntu can be shocking sometimes with how easy some things are. I mean, it can be, well, I'll give you an example. I made that video about a week ago about, top 5 reasons why you might want to run Ubuntu. And one of them I mentioned was Ubuntu server. And why did I throw that in there? I was playing around with an Ubuntu server install. A couple of weeks ago, I was playing around with Nextcloud. So I go to the internet, how to set up a lamp stack and install Nextcloud on Ubuntu 18.04. And of course, it gives me a DigitalOcean page, which is great documentation, all the DigitalOcean stuff. But anyway, the documentation was basically sudo snap install Nextcloud. Snap packages, install Nextcloud and all the dependencies, which includes the Apache web server, right? That's all I had to do. Sudo snap install Nextcloud. I go into the web browser and look up the domain for Nextcloud. Guess what? There it is. Done.
Yep.
I can't do that on any other server install. I mean, that blew me away. I was expecting, to have to play with that for half an hour at least, and 2 minutes. It was.
Yeah, it's super nice. It's all contained. It's all.
Yeah. That was just amazing.
Yep.
If anybody has any doubts about the snaps and flat packs and some of the, because people do sometimes like to criticize these new package formats, these containerized package formats, but man, for things like that, super easy. So
right. And basically I'm just replying to these things in the chat.
Yeah, I'll check out some of the chat here too. Steven says Ubuntu server is amazing on DigitalOcean.
I don't use server things because, like I said, I'm more of an end user, not a typical server person. So.
Yeah, Nicholas says snapd is unusable with LXC containers. Yeah, and somebody's recommending me Bedrock Linux. Yeah, I've had a couple people ask me to check that out. I'll add it to my to-do list. Maybe I'll Yeah. Big Pod says he installed Nextcloud with Snap on Arch Linux. Yeah, because Arch Linux uses systemd. You can install snapd on Arch, and then you can, of course, sudo snap install whatever on Arch as well. So.
Right.
Steve in the chat is laughing at us. Ubuntu, shocking how easy it is. Quote, yeah. You Arch guys, you're gluttons for punishment. Yeah.
Trying to make it harder than it is. Yeah.
Yeah, you know, if you are not used to Ubuntu, for me it's been, you know, many months since the last time I actually lived in an Ubuntu-based system. Yeah, when you go back, it does take a little adjustment period because. Yeah.
Yeah, I might just switch back to Arch or something. Cause
yeah. Paul in the chat, Arch is a great way to learn a little more about Linux. I would agree with that to a point. I will say a lot of people, I've heard this so many times over the years, that if you want to learn about Linux, install Arch, install Gentoo. Yes and no, but you don't really learn anything about Linux installing those distros unless you want to, right? Just because you went through the Arch wiki and got Arch installed doesn't mean you actually learned anything. All you learned is how to copy and paste. That's all you learned. Unless you actually want to take the time to figure out those commands you typed, what's behind those, you know, what's the point of those, you know. Just copy and pasting doesn't,
You see, that's why I hand type it every time and not, you know, unless I'm doing Linux from scratch, I still, even though I copy and paste the commands, I still make an effort to read the book because, you know, just because you're even whether or not you're typing it in or not, it still pays to read the book because you should do that because even though, you know, whether or not you hand type it or not, even if you do copy and paste the stuff in, you should still read it and read the book, not just the commands, you know what I'm saying? Because if you don't, then you're going to be stuck and you'll be like, okay, what did I do wrong? And you'll end up going in the IRC and asking for help. And if you tell them that you just did the commands and not actually read the book, they're going to be like, well, what the heck are you doing here? And they're not saying it to be mean. They're just saying, you know, we don't know how to help you if you can't help yourself. That's the problem.
And the wiki does a good job of explaining what it's doing as you do it.
I will say that the Gentoo installation guide is a lot better than the Arch installation guide as far as it really treats you like you're a complete noob. The Gentoo one does. I mean, it tells you what the commands do, where the Arch install guide is very short. It's like, do this, do this, do this, do this. It really doesn't explain in great detail what these commands do. You can get through the Arch install and have no idea what you just did. But the Gentoo installation handbook that they have, it's a lot more.
Tells you what you're doing.
Yes, yeah. So,
I mean, it's not exactly newbie friendly. You do kind of have to know what the heck you're doing, but still.
But whoever has contributed to that installation handbook for Gentoo did so in a great way. It is. Again, they talk to you like you're 5 years old, you know, in that installation guide. I mean, even though it's a very Linux enthusiast kind of distro, I mean, you have to have been around a while to even want to install something like Gentoo. But it's explained in a very well presented form. So, Spam in the chat says the dude's closet just opened on its own. LOL. I guess he's talking about one of us. Did somebody have a closet door open on its own? I don't know if that was Climby or Ben. Yeah, sometimes you see strange things on these live streams too. There's a Linux YouTuber. I forget who it was. It might have been Shaston, one of my regular viewers, Shaston Marshall.
Shaston, yeah,
he's
an arch nutball.
He claimed that he saw a ghost on one of Matt Hartley's videos. Like he caught it on camera. Like he clipped it out of Matt Hartley's video, and then I think he made a video about the ghost he saw on Matt Hartley's video. I was like, okay.
How do you see a ghost in a YouTube video? That is the silliest thing I've ever heard.
That was one of the strangest videos I've ever seen on a Linux channel. Hey, I saw a ghost on one of the other Linux YouTubers' channel. Here it is. I caught it on camera. Dennis says, I haven't tried Gentoo yet. Yeah, no reason to try it unless it fills some kind of role for you. Unless you need a source-based Linux distribution, for 99.9% of us, you don't need it. It's not something that you would use. If you're not going to take advantage of compiling everything to your specific hardware, there's no reason to try Gentoo, to be honest.
Yeah.
Unless you just want to try it just to, again, for educational purposes, there's nothing wrong with it. But
yeah, there's nothing wrong with it, but at the same time, if, like you said, if you're not going to,
right.
You know, if you're not going to optimize it to your computer, then
right.
It's really not going to, you're not going to see the benefit of it.
Right. Yeah, even somebody like me, I'm kind of a nerd. I probably wouldn't run Gentoo on my main machine, not for any length of time. You know, I've played around with it before, but, you know, I don't compile, program, you know, do all these things with these use flags, and, you know what, give me a binary-based distro. Arch is really the sweet spot for me.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, and if you do Gentoo, do it in a VM a couple times. Kind of.
Yes.
Yeah. I've done Gentoo off and on for many years, and it always gives me a sense of pride when I do it, because I learn something. Like when I do Arch, Gentoo, or LFS, I learn something new every time about, you know, Linux and my hardware and something. And that's why I do it, because it's a learning experience. And you really do learn a heck of a lot doing it, no matter how many times you do it. And
when I did that video on my channel installing Gentoo, I remember I got to the point where it was time to reboot the machine, and I rebooted, and it worked. And I started giggling like a 8-year-old girl. And somebody in the comments said, that's exactly the same way I felt when I rebooted Gentoo and it worked. It's like, wow, I didn't expect it to work.
Relief, huh, Derek?
Well, you never know. You go through all those hours, and then it's time to reboot the machine and see what happens. You don't
like,
know.
Oh,
you don't.
Crap when it doesn't work, right?
Right. So.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, 5 hours, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, crap.
Yeah.
Yep.
And Dan makes a good point. Yeah, do those kinds of installs like Gentoo and Linux from scratch and all that. Do it in a VM.
I mean, the first time
Yeah.
I installed LFS was actually in a VM, and or maybe it was on real hardware. I can't remember, but the first time I did it, I didn't get very far. I talked to Dos Gregor actually about it, and he tried to help, and then
Well, Dos Gregor is the only one I know that can actually live in LFS. He's the only one I know that's tried unsuccessfully.
And it didn't work out.
It didn't work, but he actually tried it. I mean, nobody else is. It doesn't even have proper package management. How are you going to...
And there's no package management, which I did actually get working once, but then it broke.
Yeah.
Trying to do that. I actually successfully got apt installed and play on Linux and a couple of other applications, and it was okay, but after a while I eventually accidentally broke it, and then I was like, okay, heck with this. And I tried starting over. It was just too tedious, so I said, okay, hell with this, and went to something else.
Well, Linux from scratch is not meant to be lived in. It is a educational project. I mean, that is the goal of that.
That's why it's better to run it in a virtual machine. That way you can take a snapshot if something does happen to go wrong.
And what makes the Gentoo install good in a VM the first few times you do it is you have to read documentation, right? It's nice to have the VM open and the web browser open.
If you're going to live in Gentoo, you almost have to have the documentation pulled up 24/7, because if you're going to try and live in it, it's not going to be an easy experience.
Because if you do it on physical hardware the first time and you don't know what you're doing, you have to pull up the installation handbook, right? How do you do that on physical hardware? Well, you switch to a different TTY and you use the Lynx web browser in the command line. That's how you do. And if you're not used to using that thing, you know, your mobile phone is your only other option. Pull up the phone. And it's like,
you gotta have another machine or phone or something.
Right.
Sitting down looking at your phone can hurt your back after a while.
Yeah.
And the Gentoo,
or what you can do is you can boot up the Gentoo Live CD, but that's questionable because it really depends on the hardware you have. And if you have newer hardware with newer graphics, that sort of thing, that's sort of hit and miss. Because like we said earlier, if you have a newer Nvidia card, good luck. And also, that last time Gentoo came out with a live CD, it was 2016, so unless you want to run with the minimal CD,
Yeah, I mean, if you want a 100% compatible live Gentoo CD, don't do Gentoo. I mean, there's Gentoo based distros out there that are 100% compatible with Gentoo. If you want to use,
Sabayon.
Yeah, all that Red Core. There's several of them, half a dozen of them at least. That run off a live USB. You still can use all the Gentoo packages. You can use a merge. You can use portage and all the overlays and.
I mean, yeah, unfortunately, yeah, and I would not recommend Sabayon because their package manager, at least in my experience, is very slow.
Yes, yes, it is. That's. I've been using Sabayon. Well, I've been checking Sabayon out for years. I think the first Sabayon I ever played with and installed on a real machine was like in 2012. So I've been looking at Sabayon for a long time. I want to say that version was Sabayon 8 or 9. I don't know what version number they're on now. It's many versions ago. But every time I look at Sabayon, my biggest complaint is updating the machine. You sudo equo update, sudo equo upgrade, and that thing can take hours.
Right, whereas with Calculate, it only takes like maybe less than 30 minutes.
Yeah.
Most.
Yeah.
And, I would rather install Calculate or Red Core or something that has a less stressful package manager because, Equo, I hate to say, Sabayon is not great. And even my friend Fishman, who's a great YouTuber and Linux user or whatever you call it, he's been around longer than most of us. He's 50-something years old, and he knows a lot. And even he had problems with Sabayon. So I know what I'm saying when they're, and I've used Gentoo since Ubuntu was on, when they stopped running GNOME 2 back in the day. And unfortunately, GNOME 2 was a great desktop, and Mate did a good job of taking it over. But my personal opinion, Mate, it's not as good, but it is still a good desktop. I will say that. But the problem is with Sabayon, it's slow, like you said, and their updates take forever. So. I mean, sure.
That's really the only complaint I have with it. I mean, the reason I keep using it, is because they get so many things right. I actually have Sabayon installed on one of my other drives on my main production machine. I could boot into Sabayon right now and do this live stream if I had wanted to. I'm using a Sabayon, the LX Qt version.
It's like we said, is the package manager is.
Yeah, it's really, the install is fantastic. The install is a 10-minute process. Beautiful desktop environments, how they customize, their various versions. But Equo,
like said, the only downside to it is the slowness of the mirrors.
If the package management was faster, also, when you do it in the terminal, you sudo equo update or install. There's too much information displayed on the screen. It's like they wanted to spit out as much output as they could on the terminal for their package management. There's no reason for that. Things like apt and Pac-Man, they get it right. Just give me the information I actually need. Just keep it simple, If it's pulling down a package from a repo, give me that and the percentage, but I don't need... I mean, there must be 100 lines of information for every package that it's trying to install, where I need about 5 of those. Yeah, right. So.
That's ridiculous. I mean, you shouldn't have to have dozens of code just to build a package. That makes no legitimate sense.
Right. Because if you end up wanting to save that, write that to a text file for later to analyze it for some reason, you've got too much stuff in that. You've got all this wasted information that you don't need. So.
Well, Garrett, can you hear me?
Yeah, Murray, how you doing, sir?
Oh, great! Finally got in.
Yeah.
I've been pent up for a couple of months here, listening to Distro Dude and Big Daddy Linux and Desktop Linux. So I've got a lot of things to talk about.
Yeah, good stuff.
Most of them are hands-on stuff.
No.
One of them is the flat packs. I installed. Oh, yeah, I forgot it. One of the IDEs, I'll remember in a second, and installed the DEB, the flat pack, and the snap, and the app image, and I can do a comparison here. It's the Atom IDE.
Atom, yeah, that's one I thought you probably were doing, yeah. But they've got a package for everybody, I think Atom does.
It's written in Electron, they're rewriting it in Rust, so it's going from the ridiculous to Sublime one.
Yeah. Well, Atom is a very nice IDE. I mean, it's a pretty good clone of Sublime, you know, free and open source clone of Sublime. And being an Electron app, my only complaint is it takes about 10 seconds for that thing to launch when you go to launch it. You know, but that's every Electron app. I've got some Electron apps on my system. Etcher for writing live USBs takes several seconds to launch. I mean, it's not that big of a deal because it's a great program. I still use Etcher, but you know, the slowness that some of these apps take to launch.
I get it in 6 seconds, which is still slow.
Yeah, that's a long time.
I downloaded the DEB for it, which was 535 megabytes, 5,000 plus files. Flatpak was the same. Snappak was 837 megabytes, 11,000 plus files. The app image was 150 megabytes, 1 file. The interesting thing about the app image was it didn't have the actual image. It had a source. You download it and run 2 commands and you build the app image. So I'm guessing maybe the compile sort of looks at your system and decides what it can kick out of the app image when it builds it. Because it's an awfully small, 150 megabytes compared to a Snappak of 837 megabytes.
Yeah.
And I looked at the files in the Snappak. They have some X11 files in there, so they don't even assume you've got Xorg in your system. They assume next to nothing, and app image assumes just about everything in it. So I don't know. I much prefer an app image to any of the others just because it's 1 file.
Yeah.
I can send it across. I've got 4 linked Debian 9 systems, and I just send the app image across into the path, and it's working.
Well, I'm not sure, you know, if you can really compare snaps and Flatpaks and app images as far as the disk size. In the chat, when we have Alan Pope, you guys know Alan Pope, he says you can't measure snap like that because snaps are compressed on the disk, so they don't get unpacked on disk. So I'm not sure. Yeah,
I don't think that's right.
Well, I mean, Alan would know. He works for Canonical and he works on snaps. So, he's going to be the snap expert. So we're going to refer to Alan on all things Snappak related. Yeah.
I think he built it. So
So he might have built the Snappak you're talking about, actually. So.
That's probably true.
But if you got any questions about snaps, Alan is the guy to ask about all of that. He's gonna be able to go in greater detail than any of us.
Yeah.
The other thing was somebody in Big Daddy wanted to run Dolphin in root on Ubuntu, I think. Is that ring a bell with anyone?
Yeah. I wasn't on the show last night. I wasn't able to make it, but yeah, KDE does not allow you to run Dolphin, the Kate text editor, or
you can do Kate now.
They do allow you to do Kate? Okay, they used to not allow you to do Kate, but I guess you still can't do Dolphin as root, huh?
Well, Kate you don't run as root, but it'll prompt you. It'll prompt you for elevated privileges if you're trying to run something that requires that. And I think that's the way they're going to go with Dolphin as well.
I've got Dolphin is running its root in Ubuntu.
Yeah,
I've got 2 of them actually.
Hey, just a quick aside here. Alan in the chat is about the snap disk space. He says, don't look in /snap. I don't know if that's where you're looking. Look in /var/lib/snapd/snaps. That's where the actual disk space is used. That is where it's actually installing, your snap packages. So that is the space. The disk space is actually being used by those packages.
Okay. Good enough.
That's a good tip. Yeah. So that's where you actually need to look to find your snaps. I don't know.
Yeah, and Rob in the chat says that Dolphin is root is coming back in 5.14 in KDE.
Right.
I've got it running in root right now in Ubuntu. There's a Dolphin 4 if you want to go back a generation. Right in the repository you can run.
Yeah.
And the interesting way to do it is a workaround. In Ubuntu 4.17, it doesn't run as root. But 4.16 does run in root.
Right.
Debian 9 has 4.16, and there's a way to get it from Debian 9 into Ubuntu.
Right. So you can run the old one. The old one used to be able to run as root, but the new one you cannot.
Right.
But it's coming back again. It is coming back. Basically, what will happen is when you try to manipulate something that requires root privileges, it'll prompt you using the policy thing, and it'll ask for your root password.
As a generalization, there are packages that run in Ubuntu that will not run. They're not available in Debian, and there are packages in Debian that are not available in Ubuntu, and you can get them across. The time shift runs in Ubuntu, but it doesn't run in Debian 9. But there's a way to get it in. I've got time shift running in Debian 9. I've got Aurora running in Debian 9. I've got KDE sudo from Debian 9 running in Ubuntu, which doesn't have KDE sudo.
Now you find a lot of programs that will run in either Debian or Ubuntu, but not in both. I mean, even though Ubuntu's based on Debian, there's still very much different distributions. You will find deb packages that were built with Ubuntu in mind, for example, right? They're actually meant to install on Ubuntu 18.04, not Debian 9. So you have to be careful where you pull down some of these packages, because they will be built, with
trial and error. But the thing is, when you come to apt-get install the package, it creates a .deb file in their app cache archives. Each one, so you can take that DEB file and copy it to another distro, and which is what I did. I took the Dolphin 16 and copied it over to Ubuntu, and it works like a charm. But it is trial and error. You know, anything large like OBS, I'm sure wouldn't work.
And in the chat, Ansem, one of my patrons here, Ansem, he was on the chat earlier. He's got to run. See you, Ansem. Thanks for stopping by, hanging out with us. One other thing, Murray, Zoom, your sound is a little weird in your settings. Make sure if you have automatically adjust volume ticked on, make sure that is ticked off. I'm not sure if you have it or not, but because your audio is kind of weird. I mean, it's like it cuts in and out sometimes. A little distorted.
Okay, let me see if I can adjust it. Is this any better?
Yeah, much better.
Much.
Okay, so my microphone was too far away.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Not a problem. I mean, we could hear you. It was just, a little off. So, the volume was fine. It was just cutting in and out. So.
Okay. What else did I got?
Excuse me, guys. Give me just a second. All right.
I spent a couple of weeks in OpenSUSE, and I tried to use a replacement for Manjaro, but it didn't work. What I found was that one of the things was the third-party applications. You go to a website and you put in a search like ZFS or whatever you want, and it'll come up with some choices, and then you have a one-button install.
Yeah.
But if you do that often enough and you go to Zyper Update, you've got about 14 new repositories. It seems to install an inordinate number of repositories in there. So that's a turn-off for me anyway. And I did, I installed the Pacman repository. The next day I had 611 packages were not installed, and the command line listed them all. And it didn't tell you why it wouldn't install them or how to get them installed. They were later than the ones I had installed, so it's a rolling distro, so you would like to have them installed, and there didn't seem to be a way to do it. And that was the other thing. And it didn't have ZFS couldn't work. It was not installed in the mainline repositories. It was an add-on. The only place I know where ZFS is in the mainline repositories is in Ubuntu. It doesn't work in OpenSUSE, and it doesn't work in Manjaro. Manjaro is broken as well. So that was another thing.
Yeah, I've never played with ZFS at all, other than on BSD distros. You know, that's commonplace over there. But yeah, I think Ubuntu now, yeah, you can get it in Ubuntu, and for a long time they were waiting on basically the okay from, I guess, their legal department, whether they wanted to package ZFS over on Ubuntu, because there is some licensing issues, I guess, with it.
There's two situations: one where you use it in the kernel, and one where you use it in userland. Userland one has no copyright problems. So if you install ZFS utils, and then you can use it for your data without any trouble. If you try to get it from the kernel, then virtually next to nobody does it. One Proxmox does it, but nobody else. So, and it's really a sad story, because that's, I look at Linux as fundamentally flawed in XFCE4 and gparted. If you run gparted, you have to determine the size of the partition ahead of time, and you have a lot of wasted space. And you have to create an entry manually in FSTab for it, and that will turn off a lot of people as well. And you can't resize the partitions on it. If you have ZFS, the whole volume is available to every partition, so you don't preset the size of the partition, and you can resize and remove and do them without any trouble. But the problem is, it's not for anybody really, because it's so poorly supported on it. So it's a good solution.
For file systems, if you want a stable file system, I mean, really, everybody still defaults to Extend 4 for the most part. There's a couple of distros that are doing ButterFS by default, but they tend to be more bleeding edge distros. Fedora, are they doing ButterFS still as their default? Anyway, but pretty much Extend 4 is, if you want something stable, you know.
The problem is, though, if you have to hit the red button and come back up, you're not sure of the status of your file system anymore. And if you have to do FSCK on 3 terabytes of data, it takes 2 hours. It's 2 hours of systems offline. So
and Alan Pope in the chat mentioned SUSE does ButterFS by default. Yeah, but all those Fedora and SUSE users, they're not going to be able to use Dropbox in November. Dropbox is not going to work on Fedora and SUSE if they're using ButterFS.
Red Hat's deprecated ButterFS with Dropbox.
Yeah, well, I imagine they would. Red Hat, of course, being enterprise software, they're going to use the most stable thing possible. ButterFS is not stable. So
it's a tragedy. Well, it's kind of sad.
Right.
Being stuck with the XT4 is going to get worse as the data set is getting longer. I have 2.4 terabytes right now. It's increasing. And the problem is just
Derek, I actually just linked in the Zoom chat my awesome dot files if you want to take a quick look at it.
Yeah, I didn't have the chat pulled up here. Just a second.
That was a lot of work, just so you know. What I did was I followed the video on Irish Luck's Linux YouTube. And I just, did some of what he did, but mostly it was all by doing. I just Googled a couple of things, watched his videos, and I just...
oh, cool. All right.
Written for Arch, but it can be adapted to any distro.
So this is your... for the awesome window manager? This is your...
Yes, for 4. I think it's for 3.5, but I don't remember exactly which version. But yeah, this is something that I just was thinking about and just did. So
yeah, that's cool.
It took a good bit of a day, but yeah, it was It was just something that I played around with, and I used the Zenburn theme mixed with Treason. So yeah.
Yeah, I actually don't have any Awesome window manager configs of my own. I haven't used Awesome and as my daily driver in years. I haven't used Awesome many years ago in the past. But what I've done here lately playing around with Awesome is, because Eric Dubois supports all those different window managers with Arco, if you need configs for anything, i3, Awesome, BSPWM, OpenBox, go to the Arco GitHub page and just steal Eric Dubois' configs. If you want to, just tell your friends that they're your own, you wrote them. That's what I do. It makes you look cool. Just don't tell them where you got it. So.
No.
Yeah. Uh-oh, it sounded like somebody got a message or email or something. Anyway, back in the chat.
Oops.
Yeah, I was going to check out the chat here. Alan was making fun of my comment about all those Fedora users, so about not having trouble. Yeah, all 5 of them is what I posted in the chat. No, there's more than that. I kid. Every time I make a Fedora joke, people take it seriously. I actually like Fedora. Don't like GNOME, but I like Fedora as a distro. Yeah, Alan says, you guys are fun. I like the stream. He's being kind, I think. Maybe facetious. Yeah. Anyway, I'm probably going to stream for another 10 or 15 minutes, and then I need to get off for the day.
So yeah, Derek, I plan to do a how to install a Gentoo on a live stream sometime today.
You see, when I did my Gentoo install, actually Serge asked me, hey, why don't you do it on a live stream if you're going to do it? Because I did how that Gentoo installation video came about, I did an Arch install live on a stream, because the Arch install I've done dozens of times. I know exactly how long it takes in a VM. I knew I had plenty of time to do it. I did an 1.5 hour live stream, and an Arch install, a base Arch install, takes less than half an hour. But you know, I read the wiki and talk everybody through it. And Serge messaged me. He goes, "Why don't you do it? Why don't you do the Gentoo install on a live stream?" I was like, "No. When I get to the part where I have to compile the kernel, what am I going to do for that hour where there's just dead air on a live stream? No, I have to pre-record the Gentoo install."
Yeah, that's gonna be tough work.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why I do the manual kernel, because that's more informative and more learning capable.
Yeah, even the stuff me and Serge did with Slackware. Now, the Slackware install is very quick, but package management, you're still building everything from source. That one package we did on that last video, forget what it was, Clementine. It took an hour, over an hour, I think, for Clementine to build in a VM on Slackware. You guys didn't see that on camera, but, you know, I paused the recording, and I'm sitting there in Hangouts with Serge for an hour, just like looking at the clock. Like, what are we? I'm glad we didn't do this on a live stream. Yeah.
Yeah, that's typical. That's typical with any source system. It's just, you know, it's not easy to stream those things. You know, it's like.
Well, we had planned it on that video. We wanted to show you several different ways of compiling stuff on Slackware. And we purposely picked one thing without any dependency, so it went very quick. I forget what it was. I think it was Ranger. And then we picked one thing with exactly one dependency, just to show you how Slackware handles a dependency. It was a very small program. Took a few minutes. And then Serge, for fun, says, let's show you something that has a whole bunch of dependencies. Let's compile Clementine. And OMG. That took all day.
Man,
like that was.
That's taking it a little over the top.
Oh, yeah. Because
if I was in a live stream with him, I would say, Sergey, no thank you. I'm not showing him how to do that. I mean,
no, but he had the right idea. Yeah, I mean,
yeah. If I was compiling a system, I wouldn't show Clementine if I was paid. It has a lot of dependencies, and I just, you know, when I do my Gentoo stream, I am going to do the manual kernel, because
In the chat, Silent Robot, he mentions he just pledged on Patreon. Thanks for the content, the time you put into this. Thanks, Silent. Appreciate that. Much appreciated.
Yeah. Well,
and Alan in the chat, oh wow, Clementine would build what? All of Qt? Yeah, that's the problem. It built all the Qt libraries, and you know, I don't know if it needed any multimedia codecs. A lot of that stuff's already in Slackware because on the version I installed, I had Amarok already there. Amarok. Clementine was forked from Amarok, but still all the Qt stuff, it took a long time. And it was a recent version of Clementine we were building, and the Slackware version I was using was the stable version of Slackware, which was still using KDE 4.12, I think, for the desktop environment. So you can imagine there's a lot of stuff that, you know, Clementine was pulling down. So
should use Deadbeef.
What was that?
Should use Deadbeef.
Deadbeef, yeah, we installed Deadbeef, actually. Yeah. That was the other thing we installed. Now that you mention it, that was the thing that had like 1 or 2 dependencies that, you know, it installed pretty quick.
Yeah. Are you going to do a Puppy Linux at some time?
Yeah, I actually mentioned that earlier in the stream that I still haven't taken a look at Puppy Linux on the channel. I need to do that.
Yeah, Puppy's pretty lightweight. It's pretty good.
I could suggest Fat Dog 64 spin. I've been using it for a while.
The Fat Dog? Okay.
It's excellent spin. It's a good recovery. It has a lot of features that are good for recovery.
And on some of the distros that, you know, I haven't covered on the channel, like some of the more mainstream ones like Puppy, you know, part of the reason I haven't looked at them now is, you know, I'm waiting around for like another major version of them to release. You know, some of these versions have been around forever. Well, I'll just wait till they actually have a release and look at it. But Puppy, yeah, I need to get on Puppy soon. And Paul is back with us. How you doing, Paul?
Good. How are you?
Oh, good to see you.
I gotta mute the audio here.
That's cool.
Guys, I gotta hop off.
Very good.
Yeah, good to see you. All right, Q1 Fiend, thanks for stopping by.
I lost him. Okay,
and
I'll figure out the audio.
Yeah, Zoom can be tricky.
Yeah, Zoom audio is fun.
Yes,
it sounds like your levels are fine, though, Paul. The only thing I would do in the settings in Zoom, there's a setting for adjust volume automatically. Make sure that's ticked off.
Other than so I started at LFS 8.3. The only problem is that they got rid of Chromium and BLF.
Okay, I'm just trying to.
How the hell they do that?
I'm trying to figure out how to mute. I'm hearing 2 audios.
Yeah, so you're really loud too. So whatever you just did there, yeah, whatever you did there was. Much better. Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, there you go.
Oh yeah, that's much clearer now.
All right, how's this? Okay, I
that's
just gotta turn off my
browser
because I'm hearing it
much better.
Double.
Yeah, Alan is saying they used to build versions of Qt for Ubuntu phone. They had to do it on ARM, of course, and it would take days and often fail. So,
yeah,
there you go.
Yeah, you'd hate to get all the way to the end of that and then have to start over again.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of like I was telling you, me smiling at my Gentoo install when I rebuilt. You know, you spend a few hours, you reboot. If it works, all you can do is giggle. It's like
exactly.
There you go.
I had my first kernel panic.
Oh.
Wow. Well, that's good. I haven't had one in a while. I've actually been looking forward to the next one.
For example,
I was being dumb.
Yeah. For example, when you're running like a Hackintosh, it's night and day. You have a kernel panic.
Well, it happened after I did a quadruple boot.
A quad boot? Oh, quad boot. God. 4 systems at once.
And Manjaro gave me my first kernel panic.
Really?
Oh,
yeah.
Dear God.
So, it was after I installed Peppermint 9, and I tried to reboot into...
Well, you know, if you're going to dual boot and you're going to use Manjaro, I want to say most people usually install Manjaro last. It's usually because you got to get the order on some of these right. Some of these distros will screw up everything else on the drive. I think Manjaro is one of the trickier ones.
Yeah,
I know Ben uses Manjaro. I don't know if he's ever dual booted with Manjaro, but
well, I always put the other system first.
First, yes.
Yeah.
If you do the Manjaro, if you do the second system afterwards,
Right.
you're gonna, especially if you're doing like Windows and Linux, you always put, regardless if you're doing like a Mac install or a Windows or another version of Linux. Here's the thing: I always put the system you're gonna dual boot with first, and then Manjaro second. So yeah.
No, I only run Windows in the virtual machine because I have one piece of software that I needed for. So. But I installed Manjaro first. Well, Manjaro was already there, so I installed Mint after, and then.
That's the wrong way to do it, Paul. You always
I'm still figuring it out.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, all this multi-booting stuff, there's a couple of distros that are well known for, if you're going to do them last. Manjaro is one, and there's another one I can't think of. I want to say it might be one of the Gentoo based ones. Is it Calculate? There's another one out there that it needs to be last when you do the install.
Well,
And there's some of them.
Any Linux that you're going to dual boot with, always do it last, because if you do it first, you're prone to fail.
Yeah, especially with Windows. Windows is going to wreck your machine when you.
It's really going to screw it over, because whether you're doing a Haagen-Dazs or any Mac system at all, or any Windows system, you always do those first, and then you do your Linux. Because if you do those after Linux, the Windows loader or the Mac loader is going to take over the drive, or the MBR, whatever you want to call it, and then you have to reinstall Grub, and that's just a lot of work. This is why, Matthew Moore or myself would say you use a program called EasyBCD, and if you're going to have Linux, you install Linux in the root file system with the bootloader, and then you can have an easy entry inside the Windows loader and that way it won't overtake the bootloader, and you can easily jump between the two if you have to.
Now, are you installing each OS to a different drive, Paul?
HOS?
Or are you installing each operating system to a different drive, its own drive?
No, they're on one drive. Partition.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, that's fine, but what I typically do is I keep Grub. If I'm doing just Linux and I do multiple Grub loaders, what I usually do is I just install. I don't install Grub inside the OS of each one, and then I just have one Grub loader, and that's how I do it.
Yeah.
And the only reason I mentioned that is what's made my life easier is an IC dock. It's just
It's in my future.
Yeah, and they're not terribly expensive. I want to say a 4-bay IC dock is about $50. You can get cheap hard drives these days to put in that thing, and it will save you a lot of headache, because now when you install a new OS, you put it on its own drive, you're less likely to have problems with that. When you do installs, if you're worried about accidentally overwriting the wrong drive, well, it's swappable, right? You just plug in the drive. You want to make sure it doesn't get overwritten. Just less problems with something like that.
Yeah, I don't plan on running multi-boot. It was just something to play with.
Something to play with, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not something I do much of either.
Yeah, I mean, if you're gonna do the multi-boot thing, it's best just to have multiple drives, because, for example, something can just go horribly wrong if you do it wrong. So.
Right. Yeah.
Oh, like a kernel panic.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's pretty horrible.
I didn't get all wound up about it.
No, kernel panics happen.
Eventually.
Yeah, I mean, if you have backups, just reinstall. So.
Yeah, well, it was a spare drive, and I was.
If it's a spare drive, then that's fine. But if you're doing it on a production machine,
yeah, I don't think I would ever do multi-boot on my drive.
Yeah, and since this is a live stream, and I'm going to kill the stream here in a couple of minutes, I do want to remind everybody, if you haven't backed up lately, do a backup. I still get messages. I probably get 1 or 2 every week from people. Hey, I wrecked my machine. I formatted the wrong drive. I deleted my home folder accidentally. I did this. I did that. What do I do now? And when they ask those questions, they don't have backups. Because if they had backups, they know what to do. So, guys, back up your data.
Yeah, always back up your stuff, even if you're not doing an OS install. Just do it, because you never know if, like, during a storm or any sort of problems.
Yeah, that's actually one of the easier ways to wreck your machine is like doing a system upgrade. Like, say you're upgrading one version of Ubuntu to the next, doing the upgrade path. No, that takes quite a long time. That can take an hour or so, you know, that upgrade. And what happens if power fails during that, you know, like a storm or something? Guess what? You're probably not going to be happy when you reboot your machine. So, yeah, have backups for everything.
I do have a question.
Yep.
If when I was doing the install of the multiple systems, it was asking me about grub if I wanted to say use the current configuration, or it gave me a bunch of other options, and I just chose keep the current configuration, because that had been why I had the kernel panic.
I don't know. So what were you playing with exactly?
Manjaro, Linux Mint, Peppermint, and MX.
So you had 4 different.
Yes.
4 different systems.
Okay. Yeah, there's no
offense, but I think that's a bit over the top.
on one drive, because all it takes is one not to play nice with the others and wreck and grub for you.
Well, after reinstalling Manjaro, everything worked fine.
Yes, because Manjaro usually fixes the problem, oddly enough.
Right.
If you install Manjaro last, it will usually fix the grub problems. So,
right.
Cell phones going off.
Anyway, quickly, before I kill the stream, the last minute, somebody in the chat, Mika, was asking about backup tools. I mentioned backing up. What do you guys recommend for backups? If you just want to...
System back's really easy if you're on a Ubuntu or Mint-based system.
Yeah. If you want a snapshot, if you want to do snapshots, Time Shift or Deja Dupe, which is now Duplicity, they're great.
Duplicity,
if you want to actually,
system back is good, but it takes a bit of a learning curve in my experience. I mean, there are some decent videos on that. But or you can just copy and paste your files into a drive, but that's a little bit more tedious. I wouldn't recommend that. But
what I would do though is for data, put it on a physical external drive. So I've got this USB SSD. That's a 1 terabyte drive that will hold everything on my machine, no problem. Get a storage drive, especially spinning drives now. They're so cheap these days for a lot of storage. If you have an extra drive, makes a lot of sense. Once a month, maybe, you know, put all your data. If you got a lot of data. If you don't have much data, maybe once a week or, you know, a couple of times a week. Think about it. For me, I've got a ton of stuff. It takes a long time for me to back up my my data files. I've got over 100 gigs of music on my system. That takes a long time.
Wow. Yep.
Yeah.
That's a lot of music.
Yeah. Well, it's a very large classical music library. So.
Right.
Yeah, so, other than that, you know, if you don't have much that you need to back up, the cloud always works. If you need a lot of storage, a NAS is probably where you want to look into eventually.
RC.
If you can't afford buying a NAS, what you might think about doing, I mentioned the IC dock for distro hopping. There's no reason I couldn't buy a 4-bay IC dock, though, and put some storage drives in it.
Right.
You know.
I know this may be voodoo, but I use Google Photos to back up.
Yeah.
I just use what Matt uses, which is Aptic, and that is actually I wonder if I have it installed.
And I didn't mention USB sticks. If you got USB sticks, if they're big enough to hold your data, there's no.
That, like, whether it's an external hard drive or a USB stick, that's perfectly usable.
Yeah. The rule of thumb is like you're supposed to have 3. Yeah, you're supposed to have.
I have more than 3.
Two on site and 1 off site. But I mean, that's for production. So for your home use, you probably don't need to get that.
Yeah, this is we're not in a server setting or any kind of enterprise. But in a professional setting, you need a backup, and then you need a backup of the backup, because in case one fails. And also, you have to test your backups too. That's something most home users never do. Is we never put them to the test. I never see if they actually work.
If you need something that is foolproof, I would recommend also not just the USB stick, but if you can afford it, get a large enough Google Drive account, because the 15 gigs that they give you is good, but you're still going to be kind of limited to what you can put on there. So if you're looking to store like large files or something like that, external hard drives are good for that, but you can never be too safe. So I would recommend getting more space.
Alan in the chat says his wife would be very unhappy if we lost all the family photos, even if it's not in a production environment. It's still important. That's true.
He's right.
Yeah.
Holy smoke.
Yeah. If you've got photos or documents that are irreplaceable, you probably need not only to have those backed up, you need to have them off-site. A safety deposit box in a bank or something. You need to have.
Yeah, and Kerry Holzman from YouTube just posted this crazy thing. Businesses can now pay to extend Windows 7 security beyond 2020.
Yeah, I'm gonna rush out and buy that. Okay.
I just found out that he posted that 22 hours ago. I'm like, why they would do that is just so insane.
Yeah. Well, guys, I'm going to have to go ahead and kill the stream. Before we go, as always, though, let's everybody get in a final word. Any last thoughts? Climby, any last words, sir?
No, I really enjoyed the discussions. This is really fun. And, all right. Definitely look forward to more discussions.
Yeah. Come back and see us next time we do one of these.
Yeah, I'll be here next time, too, Derek.
All right. Thanks, man.
But hope everybody enjoys my Gen 2 install later, and I will.
We'll check it out.
All right, man.
All 8 hours of it.
Next time.
All right. And Dan, any last words, sir?
Yeah, thanks for the stream, and definitely look forward to the next one.
All right, thank you, sir. Murray, any last thoughts?
Yes, I just remembered I'm on Debian 9. The kernel is 4.15 right now, and I enjoy everything. I enjoy your show immensely, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, Murray. Come back and see us.
Okay.
All right, Paul. Last word, sir.
Well, thank you very much again, Derek. Well, as you know, it's my first time on live chat, and I just want to say that your channel is, in my words, to me, awesome. I've learned so much from your channel, and I appreciate everything that you do.
No, I appreciate you, Paul. I want to thank all you guys for hanging out with me this Sunday morning. I know you probably had other things you could have done, but this was fun. I want to do more of these open chats, these video conference chats. I don't do that many of them, and I want to at least dedicate at least one a month to the patrons, because I think these are really nice. Get to know you guys a little better. Hopefully you guys get to know me a little better. Before I go, I'm going to give a quick shout out to these guys. The show is made possible today by Ansem, Carlos, David, Leor, Rob. Those guys rock. Those guys are the reasons I'm here. Also brought to you by AK Alex, Tony, Benjamin, Ben, Bill, Brian, Christian, Chuck, Climby, Dan, the other Dan, David, Dirk, Eduardo, Paul, Francisco, Humate Interceptor, Jake, John, Carl, Katrina, Marcus, the other Marcus, Martin, Matt, Mateo, Matthias, Michael, Mr. GFY, Mr. Smarty Pants, Mr. Neely Pops, Murray, Keith, Rob, Robert, Ron, Silvio, Steven, the other Steven, another Steven, Swami, Tiedemann, Troy, Voislav, Tubella, and John. You guys rock. You guys make this show possible. All right. Peace, guys.
Everybody have a great day.
All right.
Peace.
See you.